All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. Welcome to Mazévo Connect. If this is your first Mazévo Connect, it's great to have you. We do these every month. This month, we're excited. We're going to be talking about taking requests through Mazévo. Before we get started with that, though, just want to do a few quick introductory remarks. The way we typically run these is that there's a presentation. Today, the presentation is going to be done by Mazévo staff, and then at the end of the presentation, we usually leave about 10 minutes or so for Q&A. So you can definitely ask questions at that period. Although we also encourage you to ask questions throughout. You can go ahead, if you do have questions as we're going along, you can use the chat function in Zoom to type in your questions to us, and we'll do our best to get to them that way as well. So we kind of have both options. If you wait till the end, you can always unmute yourself. Sometimes that's easier depending on the nature of your question, and we'll try to get to as many as we can that way. Today, we're going to be presenting. I've got a couple of staff members here joining me. I should mention them. So I've got Claire DeGroat, our account executive, here on the call. I've also got Wendy Newland and Joe Finley, our Mazévo trainers. Many of you have probably worked with them in the past. And then I've got Dean Evans, our CEO, here with us. I also wanted to give a shout out to some new customers that we've signed up over the last month or so. This summer has been very busy. It's typically for us our busiest time of the year because we deal with a lot of colleges and universities, and a lot of them want to implement over the summer. So we just signed up recently Ohio State University School of Music, University of Washington Botanic Gardens, and finally MXD, which stands for Manufacturing and Digital, if I recall correctly. So a training center out of Chicago anyways. So great to have everybody here. I don't know if anybody from those organizations is on the call, but welcome if you are. So anyways, does anybody else on the Mazévo team have any other announcements before we get started here? I'm seeing people shaking their heads. All right, perfect. So let's go ahead and get started here. So I'm going to go ahead and kick things off on mastering reservation requests. And I've actually got a couple of slides here today. So to kind of set the stage on reservation requests, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the benefits of it. So just so everybody knows what we're talking about here, Mazévo has a built-in request form to take requests into the system so that your your customers, the people who are going to be using your space for their meetings and their events, they can go online and they could submit a request for those spaces to you through Mazévo. And that offers several benefits. The biggest one is it's less work for you. Those of you on this call that are managing and processing all of the requests for the usage of your space, because those are coming in to you digitally, that's just means there's less that you have to re-enter and type in. That also means less mistakes and less errors. So you're not trying to translate what somebody told you that they wanted or something from an email. People are entering this information themselves, which should equate to less errors for you. And then finally, this is the big one right here, better customer experience. You know, we live in an on-demand world right now, so everybody's kind of been trained that way, right? With like, I can just go on my phone and order a pizza or order an Uber or whatever. Well, it's no different when it comes to using your facilities. People love having the ability to check and see, is the room available that I want for my meeting? What's the best day to have that kind of thing. This kind of puts that information right in the palm of their hands, which people really enjoy. So those are a few of the benefits right there of the request form. Now, the question we get asked a lot, especially from people that are kind of newer to this, or maybe that are rolling it out for the first time, or maybe they've already been taking requests online for a while, but it's like, how do I get more people to do it? How do I get them to stop calling me so much or sending me emails or whatever? So just a few things here. The first thing is simplicity. So that's kind of our philosophy in the way that we've designed Mazévo, is that we understand people are not going to use a request form if they can't figure it out, or it's hard, or it's perceived as difficult, or whatever. So we've done everything we can, and that's kind of our guiding principle, to keep things as simple as possible. And so you're going to see that today, because we're going to kind of show you how the process works in there. So simplicity is a big piece. And again, we do a lot of that, but that's also on the configuration side and how you set up Mazévo. There's actually some best practices around keeping things as simple as possible for the end user, so that you can get the information you need and they get the information that they need. We'll touch on those things here today. The other thing is, a request form needs to enable you to gather all the details of your request up front. So we'll go through and show you how that works, but it's got to be useful for you, right? It can't be, partial information and having you go, okay, well, I still need a whole bunch of other things to even know, can we process this request, and is this something we can accommodate? So the other thing is, you need to be able to measure how well you're doing with this, because a lot of times I think people roll this out and it's like, okay, yeah, we've got a lot of requests coming in, but it's always a good idea to step back and kind of look at that and go, yeah, we've got a lot of people submitting their requests through Mazévo, but how many requests are we still getting over the phone and by email, and that our staff are having to field from people that way? So I don't know if everybody knows this, but Mazévo's got a built-in report under analytics called Event Origin. And I would encourage you to run this if you haven't ever looked at it before, but it will give you a good idea of how many requests are coming in through the electronic version in Mazévo versus ones that your staff is entering into the system manually. Now, you're probably asking, well, what should that be? In general, the higher the better percentage of requests come in through the request form. So, but what we typically see, we did a little sampling of our customers and kind of just to give you an idea. If you're newer to requests, or depending on the nature of your business, 50% is, for a lot of people, a good benchmark to shoot for, meaning that half of your requests come in electronically to you that way. But if you want to really keep pushing the envelope and be a rock star, we do have some Mazévo Rockstar customers that push that up to 75% and beyond. So that's just something to kind of be aware of. We actually even have a few customers, believe it or not, that are pushing that closer to 100%. Now, they have a little bit different business model. I'm looking at you, Texas State Libraries and Texas A&M Engineering, where they have a ton of study rooms. And these study rooms can be booked without approval. That means if the room's available, I can go ahead and just book it without somebody saying yes or no. I can use the space. So we see those percentages of requests get much, much higher. And there you've got a shot of approaching 100%. But for most people, probably most of you on this call, 50 to 75% is a good benchmark range to kind of shoot for there. Finally, the last thing, and this part never ends, is you have to continuously sell the benefits of the online request form to your customers. Because for a lot of customers that have never submitted a request this way for their meeting or their event, they're still going to think it's easier to just pick up the phone and call you or send you an email and it magically just gets done. But if you can reiterate to them that, hey, you can check the availability yourself online and see what's available without having to wait for, a call back or something like that, or you can just submit it to us and we'll get right to it. If you do that consistently, that's how you get more and more people to adopt it. So anyways, I'm just going to kind of, at this point, go through. Today, we're going to do a tag team thing on how we're going to go through this. Dean's actually going to start first, and he is going to show you how a request is put into the system. So he's going to be going through things from the customer's point of view. So if you've never seen before what it looks like for a customer to put their request in Mazévo from start to finish, he's going to show you that. And along the way, he's going to talk about a lot of the options that you have in how you set the request form up. Because the Mazévo request form is not one size fits all. each of you on this call has a different business process and different policies and things like that around the use of your space. And so Mazévo can be tailored for how that's done. He's going to be talking a lot about the options that you have there. When he's done with that, Wendy's going to be talking about processing requests and how those actually get processed. And she's got a special bonus. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Don't get distracted by your phone or anything like that. But we got a little special surprise feature we'll be showing off for the first time today. And then finally, Joe's going to finish this out with touching on configuration. I just want to mention that due to the length of our webinar today, we're not going to have the time to go into a deep dive on all the bits and pieces of configuration here today, but he is going to touch on the highlights there for you so you can go in there and kind of figure out how to do a lot of this stuff. And then finally, at the end, we'll open it up for Q&A. And then you saw down here at the bottom a couple of other resources, and I will put these in the chat as well. We did a couple of webinars in the past from customers that talked about specifically how they use Mazévo to take requests. And those are really good resources if you want to hear about how things are done from a customer's point of view and some of their best practices and what they do. So University of Texas did one for us, and also University of Washington. They are both great webinars. We've recorded the whole thing, so you can go and watch them. I'll put the link out here in a minute so you can go and get to those, but I would highly encourage you to check those out if you weren't on those webinars when we did them back whenever that was. So anyways, without any further ado, that's all I have to say here. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to turn it over to Dean.
All right, everybody. Let me get situated here. All right, so I've logged into Mazévo here as a requester, and this is what my menu would look like. So I want to explain a few things here as we go through this process. We're going to kind of deep dive into all of these, but I just want you to know that you can configure whether these show or not. So you have the ability to turn off book room, event book, and all events. You probably want to leave one of the first three turned on because that's how you make a request. And my events is always going to be on. That's kind of like, here's my orders. But before I jump into any of those, what I want to do is a couple things over here on the menu. This need help. This is a message that you can control. You would configure this in the administration settings, and you can control this. So if your users have issues and they click this need help, you can personalize this message and what shows up here and how, who should they contact if they have problems. The next thing here, they have access to our knowledge base. One thing I want to point out is profile and preferences. Most people don't even know a requester can do this, but they can come under here under preferences, and there's 3 or 4 things that they can touch here. They can actually set a default name. So again, Brian alluded to a couple of our customers reserve study space, self-service. So you could actually just say study space here, and every time they create an event, you wouldn't have your customer wouldn't have to type that in. Now this is set for each user. This preferred building, you're going to see where this comes in, but I can pick any building in my system as my preferred place to start when I'm looking for space. And the default start page, exactly what it sounds like. It's where am I going to start when I get in here. So you can leave those blank. Now, the last one here, if you want, when a user creates a new event or request, you can have it default to the current time. I don't do that just because I type it in, but you can always have it default to right now. So anyway, those just want you to know you've got some preferences there. And there will be coming another option here in the next release. They're going to have an option to turn on or off some notifications that'll be there. So keep an eye out for that. So with that, I'm going to jump right in and make a request. So add new request. Now for the folks that came off of EMS, you had the web process template, and we don't have that concept. So we don't ask the requester for any additional details. Their system is set up. They're tied to a single security policy, which dictates all of the rules that they must abide by. Okay. So, Weavers, I'm going to do a little luncheon here and the event type. Now, talking about configuration, I'm going to be pointing this out everywhere. This drop down of event types, it's you can control exactly which event types show up in here. So I'm going to go ahead and pick meeting. And then organizations, again, you're in control of this user, my little requester, is tied to these three different organizations. So you're in control of what they see here. Just so you know, it's not the entire organization list. And the number of people, we always get questions about this. What's this do? It's really simple. It's going to find a room that'll hold 15 people if I continue through the process. And then I go next. And the next screen here is your date and time. When do you want to do this? And I'll do 2 p.m. through 3 p.m. for my afternoon weave. And now they can pick dates off of the calendar, or they can come up here and pick all the recurrence patterns. So you could say one every weekday from this date to this date, or every week. So if they wanted every Tuesday for the next 6 months, they could pick every week, put 6 months in there, things like that. So you have all of your little recurrence patterns that you'd see in Google and in Outlook. Just for today, I'm just going to go ahead and pick specific dates. I'm going to go ahead and pick the 3rd and the 4th, and then I'm going to continue here. Now, there is an option here, and I forgot to mention two options. I'm going to go back one screen. On this particular screen, there's two other things that you can have presented here. One is an event description, and one is a billing code. So you can actually prompt your user for a billing code, and you can actually make that required or optional. So there's two other fields that can show up on this screen. Now, back to here, there's my dates, and I click next. And then here on this particular screen, there's my default building from my user preferences. It's the Student Center. I can pick other buildings. So if I wanted to see what was in the Jacobs building, now I'd have to hit Find Rooms. So here's the Jacobs, and here's the Student Center down here. So you can have as many buildings there that you want them to go through. I'm just going to go ahead and go back to my Student Center real quick here. Now, as I look at this, these are all of the rooms that are available from 2 to 3 on those 2 days. So we've done all the availability checking for you. And so we present those here. A couple things here, this favorite. So your user can mark their rooms as favorites just by clicking that little favorite icon, or unfavorite if they want. That works in conjunction with this little checkbox right here. Just show me my favorite rooms. So that kind of filters the list for you. So just if anybody has any questions on that, that's what that really does. Um, Available rooms, these are the ones they can pick, and they're available. I'm looking for something for 2 days, and it shows you how many days the room is available. So the lounge is only available one of the 2 days, and it's not available on the 4th. Okay, so that's what this days available column is. Now, right here, it's showing the price. This price comes from the organization. And so let me go back here a little bit, and I come back here to the organization, and I'm going to pick the chess club and go all the way through. And now you'll see there's no price on these rooms with the exception of that conference room. So again, it's all dictated upon the group that they're selecting. I'm going to go back to my basket weavers and come back through. And so here's my pricing. A couple of other things you can do here. New feature we put in that I'm sure very few of you know about, but you can actually search for a room here. So if I'm looking for, room 130, I can start typing in room 130. The new part that we put in here is I can start typing for projector. And these rooms have a projector. Now, how does that magic work? It's really, really simple. When I look at this room, here's the note. When you define the room, you have a note field. Well, I just typed in the word projector and whiteboard on that one. And then on this one, I think I just put projector. And that's all you're doing is we're looking through that note right here and filtering the list. So keep that in mind. That's a new feature where you could actually filter the list based on the room attributes if you wanted to. So the other tab here, available rooms, unavailable rooms. And so these are the rooms they can't have. And those are the two that have conflicts on one of the 2 days. And our J Moody room has a capacity issue. It's got a minimum capacity of 30. So I picked 15. It's not letting me pick those. So just so you can see here. Let's see, what else can I show you? I mean, I clicked on it and I didn't explain it, but you can actually click on the room. You can see additional details, the setups that you have defined on that room, and any images of that. And you can see these little dots down here. So that's my indicator that I actually have. You can put as many images on there as you want. So you can do that. So now, one other thing I want to point out here, there's a lot here. These rooms are requestable in this column, and these study rooms down here are reservable. So these are going to go in a pending status, and these are going to go in more of a confirmed status. So you're in control of that. The magic of what rooms are here is all dictated by the security policy and how close in can they book, how far out can they go. You can do quotas, how many hours a day can they book, a week or a month. So there's a whole quota system. You can restrict the hours that they actually request space. So there's a ton of stuff you can do to restrict them on what they can do here. So I'll go ahead, and after all of that, I'm just going to pick conference room 2. And now it comes up with, well, what setup style? Now, these are the 2 setup styles that are on conference room 2. We've got a little icon there, and they're just going to pick one and bring that forward. Now, your user can pick more than one room if they want to. And they can also come over here and add notes. Now, these are setup notes. So I'll go ahead and put a table in the back of the room and save that. And then Wendy might, if she pulls this one up, she'll be able to see that note there. Now, just a little pause here. Most of you probably don't know about this, but there's a feature in here that you've stumbled upon it. It's called an incomplete reservation. And I want to show you how that happens. So I am in the middle of this, and I'm going to go here to the next screen. And that's important. Once you get to the services screen here, the space is actually being held in the system. So when this user either on purpose or accidentally closes their browser or goes here, what happened is that request that they were putting in, it's not complete, hence incomplete event. So what'll happen to the requester is if they leave the system, in 30 minutes, they're going to get an email that they have an incomplete request. And if Wendy were to pull this up right now and try to open that event, she would actually see it. It's blocking the space. She tried to open it, it's going to say to her, hey, there's an incomplete event. This isn't finished, right? So she has a choice. Leave it alone and let the requester finish, or override it and take control. And then the request will be in a pending status and it'll be there. So here's what happens if the requester were to come back in and try to add a new request. Here's what goes on here. It comes up and says, hey, you need to complete the following request. And so it picks up right where I left off and continues on with the services. So the only way, if they need to short circuit this and say, I don't even want this request, that's what the cancel does. It'll throw away this entire request. We're going to keep going. So I'm going to pick facilities and audio visual. So I've got a couple notes about this screen. This list of service providers, totally in your control and how you configure it. So these are service providers at a minimum that have requestable resources. So resource by resource for facilities, AV, and catering, you say, what can they select? And we'll get to that screen here when I hit next. But you have to have requestable resources. These service providers need to be in the space that I selected. So it's looking at all of the configuration of, well, where does the facilities go and where does AV go? It's looking at inclusions and exclusions because you can define what resources go in which room. So it looks like it's really simple, but there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes to come up with this list of service providers. So it's not just anybody can get anything. There's a lot of stuff going on, totally in your control and configurable. Now, when I hit next, I'm off to the resources here. And here's the resources in facilities and in audiovisual. And I can pick whatever I want here. I can say I want one of these tables here. I can add some notes. It's also doing, when you see this little 2 max, 3 max, that's the inventory of that particular resource. So we track inventory of these resources so they're not overcommitted. So that's something we've put in a while back, but it's been in there. So it's going to tell them here. I'll show you an example of what happens if I overcommit inventory here in a minute. But I'm going to pick those 2 resources and then I'm going to continue through the process. And this is the last screen of this whole thing. It's what in EMS was called UDQ. So we're now prompting the user for additional information. These questions can be triggered on a variety of elements. It can be based on the location, it can be based on the service provider, the event type, the attendance, all sorts of things. You can configure these questions to come and go so that you really only want the relevant questions. And we get this AV question because I picked AV. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now, just a couple notes here. You saw me go through this process, and I've already told you the name of my event, Weaver's Luncheon, and I've told you when my event is from 2 to 3. Just keep in mind that the system is automatically going to add setup and teardown to that. We kind of hide that from the requester because we don't think they understand how much setup or teardown they really need. So we hide it. But whatever's on the room is going to automatically be added to their bookings. That being said, I've seen numerous people ask a question, what time is your event? So think about your poor user. You've already asked them here. They've already told you. Do you really need to ask them again? Okay. Maybe it's more appropriate to say, do you need any additional time for setup or teardown? And we hide that from the requester, but it's actually an option you can turn on in the security policy and expose the setup and teardown. Actually, it's in a different spot, but you can expose it user by user. The questions, back to the questions here. So my point there is be careful and don't ask too many redundant questions like what's the name of your event? They've already asked that, they've already filled that in. So you can have these questions prompted. They can be picked from a list and you get to define these. They can also be fill in the blank, needed, and they can also require an upload. So if you wanted to get it like an insurance certificate, you could say, please upload your insurance certificate, and it'll ask them to upload the document and store that with the event. So now that we're here, if I hit submit, it's going to create, it actually had created that event before, but now it's finished it. And it always takes the requester to my events. Now we're telling him right here, we've received your request. Here it is. Now, again, this will always come up on a new event here. And then the request is in the list. Now, assuming that they have 100 new events out here that probably won't find it, new feature coming next week, and you can turn this on or off, is we'll send them an email. Hey, we got your order. We got your request for space. So that email, we currently don't send that out, but it's going to be an option that'll be in our next release. So here's the three events that I have here. I want to show you a couple things. From this screen, they can edit any of their events, assuming that it's their event and it's not locked. And when I say locked, you can define how close in this event can get before you stop them from editing. And you can actually explicitly override that. There's a big button in the event editor. Wendy may show that to you where you can actually say lock the event, don't let the requester change it. So I've got a couple things here. If I go into this chess club meeting, it's telling me right here, hey, you've got some resources that have inventory issues. So if I look at this, you can see right here my little tractor symbol. So I've got some problems here on this one booking with some inventory items. Now, I just want to point out on this particular event, I am not the primary contact. I'm the secondary contact. So just to point out here, the secondary and billing contacts can open events that they're tied to, but they cannot edit them. So we can see this, but I can't change anything here. So if I go into this August 29th and it's nagging me again, what do I want to do with this laptop? And I can hit close, and then here's the resources that I've requested. So this is an example of an event that I can't edit. So I've got event questions here, bookings. I can send myself a request summary. Looks an awful lot like a confirmation. And I can add these to my calendar by clicking this. It's an ICS download that they can get. So in this particular case, as a secondary contact, I can't edit anything. Let's go back and touch this debate club meeting. If I touch this, now I am the primary contact on this, and it's going to let me edit. Now it shows me one booking here. We also make it look like the event editor for the event planners. So these two bookings are old, and the rules defined say you can't change an old booking. So we show them to you, but you can't change them. And the big lock symbol is your secret there. And then this last booking here, that is editable. So I can either, if I had more than one booking that I could edit, I can use these check boxes and I can change the room, the date, the time, or I can just drill into it and change the room, date, and time up here. So let's say I wanted to change this to next week. If I change this out, let's scroll down here and pick maybe the 3rd and hit save. It's doing an availability check to make sure I can get the lounge, and it's changed it. Now, when I go back to this event, it's going to show you that it's in pending status. Just a moment ago, that was in booked. So this is going to show up on Wendy's dashboard as an event that she needs to reapprove. Okay, so any changes to an event are automatically flipped back to pending, and then your event planners would need to reapprove those. And again, we've got the questions here. Messaging, this is a two-way chat message. So if I wanted to send somebody at the reservations office a message, I can type that in here, and it gets essentially instantaneously sent to them right there. So a couple other buttons they can press. They want to cancel everything on this event, the cancel event. It's not going to cancel those first two because they're locked, but you can cancel the entire event, or you can cancel the bookings right here, one at a time, or select as many as you want and hit cancel. So they have a lot of editing capability right there at their fingertips. So, but now that went back to a pending status. And so Wendy's going to have two things sitting in there. So let's take a look at past events here. Just again, kind of obvious, here's all the old events that I'm tied to. You can turn on and off a feature to let them copy an old event. You can't copy a current event. They can copy an old event forward. And just by clicking this copy button right here, and it'll ask them what new date you want to go to, and it'll let them copy. Now that's another one of those features you can turn on or off at the security policy level. So with that, that is how you add a request or a new event into the system. So I just want to touch a couple of on these other items here. Book room, it's kind of a really simple way to book things. It's one room at a time. We see this in those library study space applications, but it'll actually work for any room. So this is coming up and showing you from right now to the end of the day what half-hour slots that they can book. So if I wanted to come down here and book, let's see, Raskeller from 3 to 4 today. So that's going to make a 1 hour meeting. You'll see the time down here. And I can hit next. And now it's going to start prompting me for all of the information that I already filled in on that add new request. Okay, so it'll go through there. It's going to ask me for services, and it'll ask me the questions at the end of that process. So I'm not going to go through that, but that's what the book room feature does. The event book, this is similar to the event book that an event planner sees. It's kind of, there's some handcuffs on this. They can't do a whole lot. It's one day at a time. There's no drag and drop in here. But it's showing you that the room's in use. Next week, we can turn on for you. There's a new feature we've got that we can turn on. It's going to be able to show you the name of all of the events in here. Now, we purposely didn't do that, but we've heard from enough people, gosh, I want them to see the name of the event. We can turn that on for you, and it'll magically start showing event names here. Um, I won't be held responsible for the back of house negotiating when one requester starts calling another requester to use their space. So use that with caution. We did that on purpose, but we've now got a feature that you can turn that on. Now, what you can do here is if you wanted to book this J Moody room, I can click on that and it starts the process of creating a new event with one booking on one day, and it goes through the same process. Okay. It'll ultimately ask me for resources and the questions at the end of that. And the very last thing here, again, you can turn this on or off as a little calendar. So when I click on this, it opens a calendar tool in a separate window here, not window tab. And you can kind of configure what events show on this. So these are public events that they can go and look at. And again, this is just our public calendar feature, but we expose it as all events. It's really not all events. It's all public events that you've configured to show on this calendar. But just to let you know. That is a whirlwind tour of requesting. So with that, I'm going to stop and turn it over to Wendy.
Dean?
And uh,
Good.
oh yeah, I was just going to say, Wendy, before you go, Dean was alluding a lot to security policies in there. I'm going to post up a little document. Wendy put together, call it almost a cheat sheet for setting up security policies and just some examples there. I'm going to post that in the chat, as well as a link to our help article that talks about security policies. So if you want to dive into that, there'll be a couple of resources for you there because we're not going to go into it in too much depth today. Take her away, Wendy.
All right. Can you see my email?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So when Dean hit the submit button, the person who is the event planner who approves request will receive emails. And this is what they look like. It's coming from the demo organization tenant, new request. Okay. So now I'm going to take you over to Mazévo. And if you are a person who is an event planner, global administrator, who approves requests, this is where you will spend a large chunk of your time, and it's called the day at a glance. For those of you who have not done so, I would recommend going to your profile and preferences, and making sure that your default start page is day at a glance. If you're working there a lot, just make sure it's the first thing that you see when you log in the morning. By the way, under notifications, make sure this box is checked if you want to receive an email notification when a requester submits a request. Okay. All right. Once you have your day at a glance situated as the first thing that you see in the morning, you'll want to set it up. so that you can receive what you want to see or see what you want to see. So the 3 black lines, I go to settings, and the things that I'm interested in seeing on my day at a glance are the requests that have come in, approvals, which we're going to discuss in just a bit, and unanswered questions. That might be the bonus that you're about ready to see. Bear with me. Okay, so now I am an approver of space and I'm looking at my day at a glance. And I want to show you some tips and tricks here about finding things. So first of all, you're going to see this search for a booking field. So if I want to find all my events that are requested on, let's say Saturdays, I can start typing Saturday. Maybe I want to look for the event name, or I want to search by the building or a room or the organization. So see how as soon as I start typing something, those associated events will pop up. I could do the contact, so on and so forth. All right, I can also search by building. So if I want to see all the events in the Student Center, choose it, hit search. I can look through multiple buildings. I can also search for requests based on room tags, which are a collection of rooms. So here are the room tags that I have set up, and I want to see all requests in the large venues. So come back and look through everything now. Last but not least, over here in my search tools, I can filter on pending statuses. So I want to see all events that are in a request change status. What does that mean? What that means is, let's say a requester puts an event in, the event planner approves it, and then the requester goes in and changes it. It flips it to the request change status in this tenant. Not all of you have it set up that way. Some of you just have it set to flip back to request. But just know that if you do have multiple pending statuses, you can do a quick search on that. Okay, let me just remove that filter because I'm going to show you now all of my requests. You're also going to see here that I have secondary approvals set up in this tenant. And I'm looking at all my requests based on where they are in the secondary approvals criteria, for lack of a better word. So these events, I can go right in and approve them. There's no secondary approvals on them. This one has been denied by a secondary approval. Could be the AV person denied it or the catering person. I can drill into it and see who denied it. I'll show you. These are, the secondary approver has put them in pending. They're still thinking whether they want to approve these or not. And then down here, these are waiting for me, the event planner, to go activate the secondary approvals to let my AV people and my catering, my audio visual people know that they need to go in and take action. Now, I'd like to see who denied this, so I'm just going to drill into it. And I'm going to go to the approvals, and I see that Dean Evans, the AV manager, denied it. Brian is still thinking whether he wants to service the catering, and then he has approved the event review approval. All right. So that's just a way so that the event planner can go in and see, well, what's going on? The other thing too, one of the reasons why I chose, hey, I'd like to see my events in the approvals. If you click over on the approvals, now I can see all my requests and where they are in terms of, well, these are all the AV approval, secondary approvals. Here's all my campus safety approvals. Here's all my catering approvals, and here's all my event review. And here's the state they are in. Okay, so if you have to nudge your secondary approvers, you can quickly look through here and see where they are. All right. So I'm going to come back to my requests. And I'm going to try and find Dean's event because he's been calling me, wanting to know the status. Here it is, Weaver's Lunch. Let me drill into it. First thing I want to do, I want to look at how he answered the questions. There we go. He does need some assistance. No needed for room setup, fine. AV person hasn't approved it yet, that's fine. But you know what? Before I give this final say-so on this approve, I need some more information from Dean. This is the bonus track right here, folks. Add question. What I need from Dean is, do you agree to the terms and conditions for using this space? Now, I want to take a pause here. All of your questions that you have created in this system, in this tenant, are going to show up here, okay? All of your questions, regardless of what's triggering them, what you've set them up to trigger on. But I want to ask Dean this. Do you agree to the terms and conditions for using this space? And by the way, I want him to get an email immediately. And his answer is due. Let's just move it to September 3rd. I'll give him an extra day here. There's a holiday. Click on save. Dean's going to get an email that I need more information. Had I approved this event, put it in a confirm status, and then sent him a confirmation. Then he goes in and adds the extra information, says, yes, I agree. It would flip it back to a pending state or a request change status in this case. Okay. So this is the new feature, request for information, all kinds of ways you could use this to talk to your customer back and forth, and you can put the due date on it. Now, how do I track this? Let me go back to my day at a glance. Remember when I was setting up my day at a glance, I chose unanswered questions in my settings. So here are all my events that I am still waiting on. This one's past due. Okay, and this shows, did I choose to send an email to the requester or not? This particular one, I did not. All right. Dean mentioned earlier, go back to my day at a glance, that you can lock an event. All right. Let's say I don't want this person changing anything else in their event. I'm just going to drill into any of them so I can demonstrate this. Right here, by the event name is a little blue arrow, you can lock it. The requester cannot make changes. They're locked out of it because it may be some big event that you're doing a lot of work on, talking to folks, adding details, and you need them out of it. That's how you lock the event. Okay. I will stop sharing. Did we get any shout outs on the request for information feature that came out August 19th?
We got two.
All right. All right. I'll turn it over to Brian/Joe.
Yep. Go ahead and take her away, Joe. You're muted, by the way.
Thanks. I just got some background noise. Okay, cool. Yes. So several of the things that Dean and Wendy showed you, you might have, I'm wondering, trying to log back in, how to configure them. So they're pretty quick. They're pretty straightforward. Let me share my screen now that I got in. And if you, however, need assistance in doing that, you can either review our knowledge base, which everybody, if you remember, is right here under our little question mark icon. It'll open up the knowledge base and you can search that any topic, right? Event questions, what are they and how to create them? Jumps right to the article. If you want a little more in depth on this, You can also reach out to us, create a support ticket, and we'll set up a time with you or allow you to look at our schedule. Usually Wendy, myself, or Dean will schedule that time up with you or let you schedule. Okay. Most of the things that they showed you today with the requester's form is configurable under the settings and under security policies and under the specific security policy that you assign to that user. So under that security policy, we have a list of options here. This is where you indicate some things that you want to show for the functions to show for the user or the requester, right? Billing code, allow copy, the add new request feature, the book event book feature, the book room, and then to see all events. So that's where those settings are. There's a couple other ones that Dean mentioned that are tenant settings. And those tenant settings, we need to make sure you send us an email, a support email ticket to get that processed. And so he did mention that those were available there. And the other primary ones that we covered would be things that are requestable. And we have flags on things in the configuration that indicate that they are requestable. One of them is event types. So you can define a whole bunch of event types and then decide which of those event types the requester actually can set or select from their events. So here you can see the yeses that I have. And if I need more, I can simply check them and I can mark them as requestable. So this is the function that we have within our backend configuration piece for that requestable. That makes it visible for them to request. So in this case, you can see banquet and class. A film could not be selected, so they wouldn't have that as an option. Okay. Another one that is that way are room setups. They also have that requestable column here. You can see column 2. The other third primary one that you mostly want to really focus on most often is going to be the resources. So underneath there, you can flag that a resource is requestable or not. You again have that quick option here. If you do, or in the actual configuration of it, you can open that event, or as you're building it, you can simply mark it as requestable here as well, right? Now, the other thing that Dean mentioned in his demo was inventory. So that's here where we can say that whatever this resource is, I have only a limited number of them available. And the system will just monitor to say that only so many are available for that specific time slot based on the number that you have put here as your inventory quantity. Okay, so you make those changes or create those as you go in and then save that, and that gets them there. Okay. So those are the primary ones with regards to configuration for the requester request form. So the big one, again, down on those security. Oh, I'm sorry, there's one more that I need to cover. And that's those event questions. And event questions are here under event questions, add a question. And you do define if it is going to be triggered off of something. And it can be triggered off of an event question if you need it to be a subsequent question to another question. That way you don't display all these questions at one, only show them the ones that are applicable at the time. And then when you configure your questions, you have a standard text box option, or you have an option to define specific answers for those. Or you can make it here, I need this to be an attachment so that they can attach a document. Those are the questions. And again, I'm going through this a little bit fast just to kind of point out where they are. The last one is going to be the secondary approvals that Wendy covered within the management of the event request and how those are configured here, where you can put in those description of what those approvals are needed, and then whether it's triggered by manual or by locations or any of the other triggers, and then also who it's going to actually go to for the approval. And there can be more than one person selected for that if need be. And if one person answers it, then it will disappear from the other person's approval bucket. Okay. So I think I covered all of the real primary ones that they showed in their demo. But again, if you have questions about this configuration, you can reach out to us via our support channel, and we are more than happy to help you if you can't find it in the knowledge base or just want that little bit of extra personal touch time. We're more than happy to help without that. Okay. Anything else that I needed to point out, Dean or Wendy or Brian?
I think that's it. That's good.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. I'll stop sharing here.
All right.
Turn it
Thank you,
back
Joe.
over.
Well, I know we're getting close on our time, and I do want to, though, make sure that we got everybody's questions answered. We had a few come in over the chat through the duration of the call, but if you do have any questions, now would be a great time. You could go ahead and unmute yourself if you want, or put it into the chat. But this is your golden opportunity to ask us anything that came up. All right. I think you guys did such a great job of covering everything. I'm not sure we have any questions. So you'll probably think of some after the webinar today, and that's totally fine. Please do reach out to us. We're more than happy to go through any of this stuff. I'm anticipating some of you may want some help in setting up that cool new feature that Wendy showed you, the request for information piece in there. It's really easy to set up, but we're more than happy to help you with that. So please reach out to us if you need anything. I will be sending out the link to this recording afterwards. It will be early next week. We have a holiday, so probably closer to the middle of next week. But I will send out the recording to everyone this way. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We really appreciate your participation, and we'll be sending out the information on next month's webinar here soon. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.